Death Battle is a great show that does a great job with representing many forms of media. But one thing it tends to struggle with is movies, and more specifically, horror movies. Hell, the only horror character they've ever used is Leon in Leon vs. Frank, and the only time they really captured the feel of horror was in Carnage vs. Lucy, Venom vs. Krona, and John vs. Saberwolf. So, I decided to make a top 10 horror movie death battle ideas. The only rule is that at least one character must originate from a horror movie. I would like to give a shout out to Dr. Drhippotime, who inspired me for this video with his video Top 10 Animated Death Battle Ideas. I asked him if I could do the same thing with horror movies, and he said yes. So, yeah, go subscribe to him. It's Dr. Drhippotime on YouTube. Go subscribe. I also didn't make most of the thumbnails. Let's get into some honorable mentions. Ash Williams versus Juliet from Lollipop Chainsaw. Two zombie hunters who wield chainsaws, and there might be more to it than that, but the Ash W is very cool. Evil Superman Battle Royale, with Brightburn being the horror representative. We have Brightburn, Omni-Man, Homelander, and Titan. And speaking of that animated movie, about animated, top 10 animated, the Dr. Drhippotime video that I copied, this was on it, and I thought it was cool. So, yeah. The Thing versus the Imposter. Ha! Get it? Sus! Ha! Sus Among Us! But, seriously, Among Us is a fun game, and I do think this is pretty cool. Cujo versus Hercules / the Beast from Sandlot. Yeah, I never thought I would find a death battle matchup for a Sandlot character, but yeah, this is it. But the reason it's an honorable mention is because it's two dogs murdering each other, and people don't like that, including me. Leatherface versus the Hillbilly from Dead by Daylight. I really like Dead by Daylight, and I would like to see it represented in Death Battle, and I think this would be a good one to do it with. Leprechaun versus Uber Jason. Personally, I find this matchup very cool because the connection is space, and space is very cool. I think this is actually number one, actually. I accidentally put it in the honorable mentions. This is number one on the list. Yeah. Willy the Weasel versus Freddy Fazbear. Yeah, I guess this one's good, but I have preferred matchups for Freddy, and if you did want some Willy's Wonderland, I do have another matchup. Alright, here's a weird one. Reboot Chucky versus Fetch. Who the fuck is Fetch? Well, Fetch is from Fazbear Frights, which is a book series based on Five Nights at Freddy's. And they're basically the same character. If you just read it, it's a good book. It's basically the same thing. Now we're on to the list with number 10. The Arbiter versus the Predator. Yeah, honestly, I don't know that much of the connections other than high-tech and aliens, but this one's just really cool. I just really like this one, and the way that their abilities just go against each other is very cool. And I'm pretty sure that the Arbiter would win. Number 9. The Fazbear Band versus the Banana Splits. Yeah, this is my preferred matchup for Freddy. Just because it incorporates the entire band, which I really like. The band members are Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, and while the Banana Splits have Fleagle, Bingo, Drooper, and Snorky. I personally think that the Five Nights at Freddy's band would win this fight. Number 8. The Strangers from The Strangers versus the Pack from You're Next. Two groups of home invaders from recent horror movies. I think this would be live action, and one thing that would make it better than other live action fights, other than it being the team fight, because we don't get a lot of those, is unlike Nightwing versus Daredevil and Winter Soldier versus Red Hood, which had very expensive costumes, these costumes would be pretty cheap, which would allow for them to put more budget into something else, like the Death, which we know that electric punch and weak face destroying doesn't really stand up to. I think the Strangers would win, mainly because Your Next doesn't really focus on the killers and mainly focuses on a badass main survivor. Also Your Next is just really good. Number 7. The janitor from Willy's Wonderland versus the janitor from kindergarten. Yeah, I know it sounds like the connections are just janitors, but there are more than that. First reason being that what they end up killing is mainly considered child-friendly or cute. The one being animatronics and the other being literal children. And they contrast in the way that the Willy's Wonderland janitor is extremely devoted to getting the job done, even though of the dangers he is in. And the kindergarten janitor doesn't really care about his job, like, at all. I'd say the Willy's Wonderland janitor would win, mainly because he seems a lot more skilled, but I don't actually know, like, it could go either way. Number 6. Universal Monster Battle Royale, featuring Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, the Wolfman, the Mummy, the Creature from the Black Lagoon, and the Invisible Man. The reason there's not a thumbnail is because it's way too hard to make. And for this one, I have no idea who would win. Is this a good time to say that I have not researched a thing? Number 5. The Blissfield Butcher versus the Bayfield Baby. Both are from movies directed by this guy, I forgot his name, that also take the tropes of old movies and turn them into horror movies, which is honestly good connections on its own, but there's more than that. They both take on multiple identities during the first film. One being a crazed serial killer who's known for killing teenagers, the Butcher himself, and John Toombs, and a teenager who's in school and is disrespected by her peers, Millie, who is bullied in school, and Lori, who is disrespected by her roommate Tree. Personally, I think this one would be awesome, and just like The Strangers versus the Pack, the costumes would be really cheap if they were to do it in live action. I think the Butcher would win because he's usually shown to be really strong and probably superhuman. Number 4. Roy Burns versus Ghostface. Now, unlike a lot of Ghostface matches, this isn't a composite, which I hate because they're all separate characters, so you really shouldn't composite Ghostfaces. This matchup specifically uses the Ghostfaces from Scream 2, Mrs. Loomis, and Mickey Rooney. But, not Mickey Rooney, that's not his name. Just Mickey Riley. Or just Miss Loomis, because that's the thematic one. So, basically, the connections to this one are, after one of their children that they abandoned were murdered, they went on a revenge spree against the people who killed it. With Billy and whoever Roy's son was in Friday Part 5. I don't remember. And to do this, they copied a killing streak of a previous serial killer, being Billy and Stu and Jason Voorhees. Personally, I want Ghostface to win, and I don't know who would win, so I'm just going to say Ghostface. Number 3. Chucky versus Springtrap. Both are previous serial killers that after a chase, they end up on death's door, and then after their death, they end up possessing a thing meant for children, the Spring Bonnie suit, and a good guy doll. Now, with this matchup in specific, I think I should talk about their other matchups, since they are way more popular than this one, but really shouldn't be. 2 in specific. Chucky versus Slappy, which is just a massive stomp, even though it is kinda cool. And Springtrap versus Michael, which is literally has 2 connections and only 3 if you use the books. And like, it's just not as, and one of the connections it has is also shared by Chucky versus Springtrap, so I don't know why you would do anything else, especially Michael. And I guess Springtrap's other matchups are fine. If you use the games for Springtrap, which I would, just the games, it makes it very debatable and fair. But if you'd use the novels, then it's a pretty obvious Springtrap win. But I think he does win either way. Number 2, Freddy vs. Pennywise. Yeah, this one and the next one are the most obvious ones on the list, because they just should happen. And the connections are pretty good, too. They're both people who use fear to power them and kill people. It's like Scarecrow versus Mysterio and Madara versus Aizen. It has, like, literally unlimited potential because of their power sets. But the one bad thing about it is that this is just a massive stomp, and Pennywise just wins. Number 1, the most obvious fight on this list, and probably the most obvious fight in a Death Battle Top 10 list ever. Jason Voorhees versus Michael Myers. Connections are two silent, very tall, strong serial killers who originate from movies and really made the stereotype of the tall, silent serial killer. But the connections isn't what makes this great. It's the animation potential. This one should be live action, just like the previous two fights that I mentioned, would be extremely easy to buy costumes for because the costumes are relatively simplistic. Jason should take this pretty easily. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Don't forget to go check out Dr. Drhippotime and his video, and he might be making one of these in the future also, so if you like this one, go check his channel out. And please comment what horror movie matchups you would like to see, or what you think of mine. Thanks for watching.